You said to move something, and then I don't know what you were saying.
Hey,
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 look
look
who
at
it
that.
is.
That is my father's wife, also known as my mother. My biological father, Steve Brogan's here. Good to see him. Um, I'm so excited. Uh, we're going to talk about, I put my little graphic up that said work is broken. And there was an announcement made, I'm starting to forget now, sort of early beginning of the year kind of a time, that the two of the co-founders of BlogHer have moved into a whole new business called Optionality, and that there's something to learn there. So we have great stuff coming up.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Jesse Cole again today. Jesse Cole. I was looking at that. That's what I looked at.
Jesse.
I think you look talks.
I had a realization. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Chloe. I had a realization that I haven't played the other intro in so long, and I think it's just because that one's got Tim, and I think the other one's just the music. So, but it means that we miss out some of the other people who show up to the show. So,
man, Tim Kitzrow is just the best. We didn't even ask for that. He was like, "Oh, do you want me to record some stuff?" And we're like, yes, please." And he sent us 20 minutes of things, totally unscripted. It was just amazing.
Files. It was great.
Yeah, amazing.
I realized something, and I'm going to get to that 1 second. I'm just going to really quick. Hey, want to make your own dumb show? Make one. StreamYard. cbrogan.net/StreamYard. They're great. If you like the show and you like how it's been made, do that. Sounds great.
Get your own work revolutionaries.
Yeah. So, yes. Everyone screws up Jory's name so badly that everyone who's smart goes and actually looks it up again and says, "Oh, it's Jory J. Jardin." Jory Desjardins. I did it just by tripping. But it's the French way. Desjardins, And then I went, oh my gosh, do I call her Elisa or Elisa? I have known both of them since 2005. And I don't think, I always get it wrong is the problem. It's whichever one I think it is the one I get wrong.
Well, let's find out.
I'm just not going to say it. She's just going to say her name. But again, I've known for decades now. God, we're old. All right, Jory. And fix me.
Elisa. It's Elisa.
Okay, so now I've got it right. Yeah. I'm the best. So anyway, welcome on board.
All right, Christ.
Sorry. Listen, Elisa and Jory, I've known you since pretty much forever because you started BlogHer in 2005. I started PodCamp in 2006. My event is an utterly different thing because it was an unconference kind of a setup. We stole from Chris from doing BarCamp, and we just said we could do something like that for podcasting because there's nerds, and it was fun. But you had a big international brand, sold it, all that kind of thing. So I know you mostly from that, and then as happens, you sell off the brand, you do the thing, you get out, you go off and you do other stuff. I think Jory's done a lot of fractional work, a lot of, CMO type work. I've seen Elisa a little bit more actively because of her activism, a little online. Can you just give us the bridge between BlogHer to Optionality so that other folks like me who have known you for a while can catch up?
Yep. Yeah, sure. So we sold BlogHer in 2014, and I stuck around for a couple more years. Jory left a little before me, but ever since we left the company that acquired us, we're both local to the Bay Area, although in different corners of it. We stayed in touch. We would get together every few months. We would compare notes. And I would say both of us I think it's kind of hard after doing one thing for me, it ended up being 12 years from founding to exiting the company that acquired us. I think we were both kind of searching for what's next. And so I was going in and out of early stage startups, wrote a book, did all sorts of things. Jory was doing the same kind of, she took a stint at a really big company, which I never had the desire to do. And we just kept comparing notes about what we saw out there, what we were experiencing as people who had become pretty seasoned professionals, pretty experienced, pretty senior, and what a struggle it felt like. And it was finally last year that we were like, And actually, really, it was Jory that came with an idea of something specific. So I'm gonna toss to Jory. But we just kept talking, and we just kept probably remembering how fun it was to work together before, and thinking maybe this is something that we could do something that would fit into what we love to do and what we're good at. So Jory, I will
Yeah.
toss to you.
Okay. Well, one of the things that Elisa and I would always talk about is there are a couple things. One, we were in our zones when we were working on BlogHer. Now, it was stressful. We probably put way too much time and energy into BlogHer, but it didn't feel like that. And so I think one of the things we had noticed about roles moving forward is we're putting energy, a lot of energy into work, and we weren't feeling the same payoff. And I mean payoff in terms of just fulfillment. It didn't mean as much this time around. So I personally had been looking for something that was as meaningful as BlogHer and just was not finding that. So that was the first thing. I think the second thing is the older we got, right, and the more experience we got, we wanted to be recognized for that experience. But it was really difficult to find roles that would actually pinpoint the parts of our experience that we wanted. And you would understand this, Chris, because you were in the influencer space. But I recall leaving BlogHer and then getting calls constantly for the first few years after leaving, from folks that wanted, oh, can you connect me to influencers? Can you do this and this? And it was really about a perception of what we did. And it had nothing to do with what we did at BlogHer, right? It's like, oh, you're an influencer. I would get, people sending me product to review, which I never even did at BlogHer, right? So I felt like I really need to come back into the world in a way that shows what I want to do and how I want to contribute, not picking up roles that are finding ways for me to contribute. It didn't feel right. So Elisa and I were talking about this, and also Elisa had been to a retreat and said, you know what? I came out of that retreat. Like, there's several things I have on my bucket list, and here's one of them. I want to work with you again. And I was like, so interesting you mentioned, because I've been thinking about things and I want to work together too. And there's certain things that we sort of locked in on, and it was around work. And I think we made this connection around when we co-founded BlogHer. There was something happening in the media world, and things were shifting, and we knew that it was shifting. We didn't know exactly how it was shifting, but we knew we wanted to be part of it, and we wanted to help others like us to find their way in this new world of many-to-many communication. And similarly, we feel that work has shifted considerably. There's a lot that has changed because of COVID, because of the economy. I think also the life stage that we're at, where we're experienced and we're looking for something more meaningful and a way to contribute differently.
Experienced. I like that.
Yeah.
But I will say that part of the shift you're talking about has to do with finding purpose in work and doing meaningful work, which is a Gen Z thing as well. Like, they're saying they're not going to take a job just to do a job. They want meaning and purpose in their work. And though they're even willing to take less money in some cases to do that.
Right. It's not all about money. It's really not. Yeah. So we kind of saw the parallels there, and we realized that we had really kind of homed in on this with bloggers, influencers, creators, I think as they're called today. And we thought, how do we do this for independent workers? And that's how the idea for Optionality was born.
But I think everybody's an independent worker.
Something that we can bullet this down into, like, what's different about Optionality than what people are doing right now? Like, how far are you in this journey of defining this, by the way?
Well, we launched last month, on LinkedIn. So it's pretty new. What we were seeing out there is that there were communities building for fractional workers, and there are consultants working with companies to help them manage this new workforce. But just like in the old days, this is how we keep seeing the parallels. You had bloggers and you had brands, and they didn't trust one another, and there weren't really standards of practice of working together in these early days. And so half of what BlogHer did was bring people together into an ecosystem and like provide a way to build trust and build a bridge between these groups that needed each other to work and to do better. And so we kind of see it in the same way, and that we're trying to have a kind of 360-degree conversation about it. So, but I will say that it's not just about the fractional work, because this is something that's impacting, as you said, Gen Z. It's impacting people who are inside companies who want to find more meaning, people who are managers in companies who aren't getting a lot of support in how to deal with their workers wanting more purpose and meaning and optionality in their life. So we really see it as like a holistic, the whole world of work is very different. It's not really, it's been the last 20 years. If you get me on my like rant, I'll talk about like the last 20 years of disruption to the workforce and how the workforce we all grew up thinking was there and the way your career should go hasn't really existed for quite some time. But yet we haven't adjusted our expectations, both from the management side and from the worker side. So, it's been a new world, and the pandemic was like a forcing function.
I have sort of a practical question.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see where workers, employees, kind of like the workers of the world would be super down with all this. I see less employers being down with it. Like some employers for sure are like, hell yes, let's talk about well-being. Let's talk about meaning. Other people are like, listen, I pay you to line edit copy. Just sit here for 9 hours and do it. So what does this look like? Like, how do you change the world of work when you need to change employers?
Oh,
well,
yeah. Well, this is the question that I think the $64,000 question. Well, maybe it's even more now. I'd say it's the $1 million question, to be fair, today. One of the things that we've had experience with, I'd say in the last 10 or so years, is that we're working with companies. So I've been able to see how this plays out in companies. And one of my gigs was with a company that worked with executive development companies. So the fun part of that is I got to see who are the people that are developing others in companies and make connections with those people. We can't keep the two communities separate, where we have our independents over here and we have our working organizations over here. We are finding different ways by inviting them to the conversations. So we recently had a webinar, and we worked with Harris Poll, John Gerzema, who's the CEO of Harris Poll, to provide like the data. And the great news about that is it helped for organizations, for them to see, oh, this is what's going on in the workplace, not just within my company, but the shift in attitudes and why I need to start thinking about maybe there are other ways to employ people, to work with people.
So what kind of tangible benefits can you point to for employers? Like I imagine, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're focused on employee well-being, integrating meaning, can't speak, changing the world of work to make it better for employees, I would imagine you see less turnover, that you see less people signed off with stress, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is I hate the way we sometimes talk about the workforce like they're houses, like the buyers and sellers market.
I'm a nice bungalow.
That language is like, we're not houses, we're humans. And, to build a win-win for the manager and the employee, yes, that leads to retention. We had Sheila Dowd from ServiceNow. She's worked at large-scale companies the last 10 years. And she was saying that in her world, it's still hard to find the right talent. And there's still a battle out there, for the right talent. And so she's like, if flexibility will help me get the right person, the company's open to it. Also, I mean, there's a whole bunch of data that support that it's better to be diversified. It's better to have your employees feel satisfied and have meaning. The management doesn't always know how to act towards working with that data, right? So we've known this, like, look at the investment community. We've known for years that having a diversified board or diversified founders, diversified C-suite leads to better financial outcomes. Doesn't change the VC world too much, so there's definitely this disconnect between what the data says is good. I liked what John Gerzema that Jory mentioned. He said something about enlightened companies will find that going down this route of working with people in this way, because, it is true that the Jamie Dimons of the world definitely want the command and control. They definitely want butts in seats and to see you there. And so it's going to be a process, and eventually, more and more enlightened companies, as John called them, will be there. I'm looking at the comment in your from Yeah Man Variety Channel about Gen Z people that don't want to take a job. And I just want to point out that jobs, the workforce changed for them. The gig economy, when we came back from the financial crisis of 2008, the gig economy was a big way that, at least here in Silicon Valley, that tech companies were able to grow and thrive. And it's based on the idea that people are not going to be employees and therefore not going to get benefits and not going to have security and all these things. And the trade-off is flexibility, right? And so now we're just saying, you know what, we need mutuality on that. So if you're going to ask me to be a gig worker, if you're going to ask me to have a trade-off for flexibility, I'm going to start asking you too. And as John said, he said that the Harris poll has found that 70% of workers think that their companies need them more than they need the companies. And there's a confidence out there. And this is professional workers, right? So we're talking about knowledge workers, professional workers. There is a confidence out there. And as you said, Carrie, they are willing to trade off for money, for the flexibility and meaning that they want. And this is a workforce that people haven't seen before. And I do think the pandemic, I just want to say one more thing. This is my other little rant. In the pandemic, when we got to the lockdown, we massively changed overnight, not just that all the workers went home overnight, but continued working. And most companies that weren't in hospitality, food and beverage, most companies did not miss a beat. And the reward that workers got for 2 years of performing a totally new environment with death and anxiety all around us was to be told they weren't productive enough and that things needed to change. And that was unfair. But the other thing is that there was a whole new social structure. Unemployment was available to contractors, consultants, and business owners for the first time. Mortgage forbearance, no eviction, lots of programs around food insecurity, getting unhoused people into housing. We overnight kind of transformed society. And I think it gave a lot of people the privilege that some of us have always had to kind of yammer in our heads about what gives us meaning and what we want. Well, a lot of people who didn't have the time and energy to do that all of a sudden had some time to think about, well, I'm not sure I'm going to go back to the backbreaking work where I'm not valued and I'm not paid a living wage, And I think that's been part of the transformation.
So let me ask a question I'm still struggling a little. So, and that's, I understand your story. You only just launched this. This is definition time for some of this. So I think we're discovering at the same time. But one thing I heard that I think like the danger, I think I heard what you mean. So I could be utterly wrong. Upstream version of the gig economy in some ways. When we talk about things like fractional roles and that sort of a thing, we saw an example of things in the gig economy, like the Lyft, or, you're on that coast, you have 3,000 more gigs that the other coast and the rest of the globe don't even know exist. So upstream, like professional gig economy kind of stuff, fractional stuff, can you fractionalize and fragmentize and sort of in some way untether higher level performance, high quality workers such that they can try to seek better alignment, maybe even a mesh of employment opportunities? Yes. But how does a big company take advantage? Is that what Optionality is hoping to solve?
I think it's what it's trying to solve in part, because not everyone chooses that route, right? Some people who are in professional roles may decide, well, I want to explore my artistic side. I want to be a creator. So how do we provide a roadmap for them? But I'll speak specifically to the fractional bit because I am a fractional and I'm feeling the pain of that pretty consistently. I think if there's anything that is what I love about fractional work is that I get to experience the impact, but it's also on my own terms in terms of the time that I put in. I have other projects that I'm working on, Optionality. I cannot put all of my time into an executive role. I think the challenges and what we can work with companies around is in developing a standard protocol. Just like in the advertising world, there was an IAB, an Interactive Advertising Bureau, it still exists. They've set the tone and the rules. We also did the same thing with BlogHer, by the way, when we worked with the FTC on guidelines around disclosure and helped to establish that with advertisers. How do you best disclose when you're working with creators?
Which people still don't do.
Well, hopefully some of it's stuck. We think that that can happen in the work world, where let's talk about terms for if you're an executive and you're working part-time, you can still get equity. That shouldn't be something that's crazy, right? Wait, you're not here full-time. Why would you get equity? If you don't get benefits, you still should get paid time off. You still need vacation, you still need downtime. So trying to define what that looks like and give people a common language to use when we're talking about a fractional role. Because I think right now, at least what I've experienced in fractional roles is, it's great, you're here as an executive, so the impact is full-time, and you figure out how that looks in a part-time, but we're going to ask you the same questions in a full-time role. So you have to constantly create those boundaries, and it's still not accepted or commonly accepted practice. So that's what we seek to do, is make it more common and to give people the tools to negotiate and to have the right format that works for them.
I think some of the resistance might lie in the fact that people don't know what exactly it entails to make the workplace more flexible, more better for people's well-being, to take into account meaning. I think they assume, like executives probably assume, that sounds expensive and hard and I don't want to. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, right? There must be some things that they could implement that are simple relatively.
Well, I think Jory said this once, and I really loved it. She was like, why don't, ask people what would help them with their well-being and meaning. There was a recent study that came out that said the vast majority of like wellness programs that companies introduced, that they paid some consultant money for, didn't really make the difference for people, because it seemed like it was adding, go take this meditation class, here are these things that actually seem like they might be adding tasks. The one exception that this study found was that people who were given company time to volunteer or company funds to donate felt a lot of satisfaction and meaning from that. But a lot of the wellness programs, they really didn't. And then, what the commentary was in response was, well, yeah, what I would rather have is a fair wage. What I would rather have is more time off. What I would rather have is like being paid the same as my male colleague. Like that would be super good for my well-being. So the companies that are spending lots of money aren't necessarily routing it in the right place. And I think we would like to be part of the conversation about, well, how do you make that better? I want to say that when I first started thinking about this, I definitely was coming out of my own experience. I had been in full-time as a COO as a very small startup. And eventually, my last act as COO was like laying off half the team and myself, right? And then it's a whole story. But what I realized afterwards was that I probably could have gotten 75% of the really impactful stuff I did done at even maybe quarter time. I was the biggest check being written, and I just felt like there was so much overhead around meetings, around, for a very small company, like this big OKR process I was supposed to run, all this overhead on the job. But the actual impact, if we had looked at it differently, if I'd come in fractional, I think we could have gotten so much done and cost a lot less money. And so someone said, once, well, is this just about, early companies that can't pay enough and needing to get you cheaper? And I'm like, no, because then I was talking to a friend of mine who works at McGraw-Hill, one of the big publishers. And she's like, I wish sometimes instead of layoffs, they offered people fractional transition, which can go in either direction. Sure, they might get another full-time job. I bet most people would stay and explore that life if they had a great foundational customer for their fractional work. And then Sheila from ServiceNow was saying sometimes if you have a full-time person whose life circumstances change, they have a child with an illness, they have elder care they need to do, she would rather explore letting that person downsize their hours and become more fractional rather than lose them in their institutional knowledge. So I think there are a lot of different models for fractional work that even I wasn't thinking of when I started. And of course I was just personalizing it, like this was my experience and this would be good. This would be good to fix. So I think there's a lot of scenarios, but it starts with building trust that those scenarios can work for both sides.
So
I don't know if that trust is there.
That's an important point. I mean, as a guy who wrote a book called Trust Agents. So I think I want to go back to get forward because Jory threw it out, and Carrie, being a lawyer, pointed out the fact that people still don't do a great job of disclosing.
Yeah.
That detail aside, because what she's really pointing out to is people have ignored your advice after so many decades because they're like, which is horrible because you spent all the time. But let's go backwards. BlogHer, you show up, there is a world of mommy bloggers who are getting exploited in every direction, who are getting used for their audience, which is kind of where this concept comes from. You say, wait a second, let's show these people what agency looks like. Let's show these people what the concept of paying people in an equitable way looks like. Let's show people that it's not cool enough to get free makeup. It's cool when you get sponsored to spend the money and use the makeup and do both, because it is business. It is a media business. That's what we're going to make. What I feel like Optionality is saying, so you kind of put systems in place to help people understand their interaction with bigger companies that didn't have the tools to do this. You're saying the same for Optionality. You're saying, Jory has done a lot more fractional gigs. Elisa has done it a little bit as well. And Elisa has noticed so many times that, this would have worked a lot better if we just plugged in and plugged out. And if they had the right systems, the right financial setup, the right, merit methods and all that, I'll fight you on equity a little bit. All the other ones, I'm with you, because equity is to build like a durable, sustainable organization. Let's not talk about that one. I think that there's a lot to it. I'm not saying no equity. I'm saying there's just way too many sentences to end. This is not a long show. Am I even close? In this, Jory, am I in the ballpark? How are you feeling?
Oh, I mean, I'm agreeing with most of what you say, except for that equity, because a fractional can continue to contribute and build the bottom line for a company. But we can have that discussion next time, Chris. But yes, I think that if there was anything that was missing in my own experience after BlogHer, when I was working with companies, it was agency. And it was a very binary choice. Either I'm with you and I'm giving you everything I got, and I have to go figure out who's going to pick up my kids, and I've got to, outsource everything in my life as an executive in order to make this job work, or I have to be an independent where I lose my health insurance, there's all kinds of things being an independent worker that comes with that, which is why I think a lot of people are kind of afraid of this whole notion of having agency, because you lose a lot as well. And I think what we're saying is, why does that have to be the case? Maybe we need to just have a different conversation, which gives workers more agency so that they can pick and choose what they want in the trade-offs without feeling like they're having to get rid of a lot of the benefits of full-time employment.
Yeah, because by the way, there's no law that says plenty of industries have companies built on part-time employment and give those part-time employees benefits, as one example. It's not common in the professional / knowledge workspace. And there is no law that says you can't have a part-time worker who also gets benefits or accrues paid time off. However, and I would add that most companies are exploiting their contractors and consultants. There are actually very specific rules about how you're supposed to work with consultants and contractors. And my experience is, once they get you in there as a consultant or contract, they're still treating you like an employee. They just are off the hook for all the things that employees are meant to get.
I like it. I'm going to throw a couple things up, and then we're going to have to. I didn't mean to Mike Wazowski you there, Jory. Sorry. I like fractional work because I can make double income. I'm able to work for multiple companies in 8 hours versus spending. By the way, EJ is going to be a future guest shortly, although I feel like I dropped the ball on that, so I'll follow up. I give flexibility all the time as well. We're going to blow through to the end of the show because that was super fun, and there's a lot to absorb, and there's so much to take in. I'm going to ask the one question I've asked every single guest that's ever been on this show. What goes in your backpack? Could be something physical, could be something metaphorical. It could be hope for the future. It could be a rock. Jory, what goes in the backpack for you?
I'm changing my answer. I had one at the beginning of the show, and now I'm going to talk about my yoga ball that I'm sitting on right now.
I
would deflate it before I put it in the backpack, but it has been what I have used the last 10, 12 years to just for comfort, for my back, and I will never turn back. I will never use a regular office chair ever again.
That blows my mind.
Elisa, what do you got?
I have a yes in my backpack.
Oh, I like it. I'll take a yes.
I keep a
I always
hard
say-
maybe in my change purse.
I always say I follow the yes until the no becomes obvious, and see
Fun.
what happens.
Follow the no till it becomes obvious. I like it.
No, follow
Well-
the yes till the no becomes obvious.
That one. Sorry, I'm going to follow the listening to you part until I'm better at listening, because that was a big complaint my grandmother had about me my whole life. I'll tell you, one time I was standing in front of a whole crowd, and she said in front of everybody,
I'm surprised you were even listening.
I know, what the heck is even wrong with